Hello, I'm State Representative Janine Nodder, and you're watching Chattin' with Janine. Earlier this summer, I did a show on Hot Dog Day to benefit the Alzheimer's Association, and that fundraiser in Merrimack took place on June 30th. And here to tell us about it is the New Hampshire Regional Manager for the Alzheimer's Association. Welcome, Melissa Grenier.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for returning to the show, and I apologize for not wearing purple. I have another meeting after this, and I just didn't think about it.
Well, that's okay. The last time I didn't wear purple, so
I thought, so we're even.
Yeah, we're even. I had to represent today. So yeah, the hot dog event right next door to Town Hall was really successful this year. The most successful year they've ever had. The proceeds do come to the Alzheimer's Association to support our programs and services, but they raised $13,000 this year.
Oh, and how much did they raise last year?
I want to say $10,000 to $11,000 last year, if memory serves me correctly. But I remember Bob Bergen, who ran the event, I remember him saying that this year they sold 2,500 hot dogs. So he was busting at the seams, literally, when it came to hot dogs. So it was really great to see. There were tons of families, police and fire departments, and lots of municipality staff were there. And people have just come to know that that event takes place at the end of June every year. So it's really nice.
Well, I'm sorry I missed it. This was my first year missing it. I've gone to it since the inception of the Hot Dog Day and here in Merrimack. I had two reasons for missing it. My oldest sister had her 50th wedding anniversary, and I wanted to go celebrate. And our middle sister and I went to Alaska the week before that. So that is why I missed it.
Well, it was really nice to be able to see you before the event anyway in May to help us promote it. So you were there in spirit.
I did, and I did help by having it on the show.
Yeah.
The fundraiser.
Exactly.
Now, how many years now have they had this Hot Dog Days?
I want to say 7 years.
7 years.
I should know that because I've gone to the event every year, so I believe it's 7.
Because I remember the first year I met Bob. I was out jogging and I stopped him, and I had not seen his email because I think I was still in early. I hadn't been in the legislature that long, so it was so overwhelming getting all this mail, and it's so hard to keep up with it. And some of it goes to a junk box, and I didn't know how to access the junk box because I didn't have it. I had to go to the IT department and have them fix my account so I could see my junk mail. And he wasn't happy that I hadn't responded. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I do have that problem fixed, at least on my big computer. On my phone, that's still another issue. But occasionally I do have to check that junk mailbox because I'll see mail in there from constituents and I know their names. In fact, last year I worked the Hot Dog Day and somebody came up to me at the table and gave me his name, and I was able to say, "Oh, hi, that bill," and I don't remember the bill number. I said, "I wanted to tell you that that ended up being tabled because there was a problem with it or whatever," and he was like shocked that not only did I know who he was, but I knew the content.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So
that's really nice. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure you get to know people in Merrimack. It's a big enough community where there's a lot to do, but small enough where you get to know everybody. Not everybody, but
at least
get to know
names.
A lot of people.
Sometimes you'll see a face and then you got to go through the Rolodex in your mind, like, okay, where do I know this person from? Is it school or one of the kids? Is it the gym? Or is it somebody I talked to at the grocery store?
Right.
And everybody has that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So getting back to the issue at hand, Alzheimer's, on that last show, I had mentioned a book called The Inheritance, and written by Nikki Capsambellis. I know Nikki's brother and sister-in-law and her nieces and nephew. I brought the book with me, and I'd like to loan it to you. It's a very detailed book about Alzheimer's, and it talks about families who have familial Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So that means that they get it when they're young. And a lot of them die at a young age from this terrible disease. Yeah. There's a family in South America. Oh, there's pictures in here too. There's one family that has several children, and not all of them had Alzheimer's, but some of them did. So I hope you enjoy the book.
Yeah, thank you.
And we had also mentioned a movie and I couldn't think of the title. It was with Julianne Moore and Alec Baldwin. The movie was called Still Alice, and so meaning she is still Alice even though she doesn't know who she is.
Right.
Very, very sad movie.
Yeah.
So have some Kleenex if you watch it. And I just thought about that movie for many weeks after I saw it.
What's really nice is that there are more and more depictions of people with memory loss in films and in television shows, which is sad to see on one hand, but I think reflects the substantial increase in folks with Alzheimer's disease that we're seeing here in the United States and worldwide. So I think it's really powerful to see movies that are centered around a character with memory loss.
And I think today, in today's world, almost all of us know somebody or have a relative or know somebody that knows somebody that has some form of dementia. And dementia is the umbrella term for memory loss, and Alzheimer's is a specific disease.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Alzheimer's is one type of dementia.
Are there other types of dementia? Do they have a name?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's another frequent dementia called vascular dementia, and that is a type of dementia most often caused from a stroke or a series of mini strokes. Oh. So really what vascular dementia is has to do with a lack of oxygenated blood flow to the brain. So when someone has a stroke and there's a blockage or another issue that goes on, there's not enough oxygen getting to that specific part of the brain. So sometimes people can recover certain physical aspects of their functioning after a stroke. You know, if they have, say, left side weakness, sometimes with rehab they can rebuild that strength. But depending on where and how significant the stroke was, a person may be left with some lingering dementia related to the vascular issue.
I had a neighbor that had a stroke, and he said it's the little things, like how do you use a microwave again? Mm-hmm. I'm like, well, I might have a problem like that. So vascular.
So that's one additional one. And let me start by saying Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia. So it accounts for 60 to 80% of all dementias that get diagnosed. So
wow.
If there were 100 people in a room, 60 to 80 of those folks alone, in of themselves, would likely have Alzheimer's disease as their specific type of dementia. So Alzheimer's is the most common, and then we do typically see quite a few people with vascular dementia. And did you want me to go over a couple other?
Yeah.
Another common form of dementia is called frontotemporal dementia, and that's a type of dementia that impacts the frontal lobe of the brain and the temporal or the side lobe of the brain. We tend to see that type of dementia in younger males, and I work with people in older adults, and so to me, someone who's in their say 50s is young, based on the clientele I usually work with. So we do see frontotemporal dementia impacting males on the younger side of things. And with frontotemporal dementia, we see sudden changes in mood. So someone could have a sudden anger outburst. We also see a lot of uninhibited behavior because the frontal lobe of our brain has to do with our executive functioning. So abstract thought and reasoning and judgment and insight and awareness. And so if a part of our brain is telling us, geez, I want to say something right now, or I want to do something, the front part of our brain will say, well, now's not a good time, right? Like you don't want to yell an obscenity in church, right? Yes. Right. So if the front part of our brain is not communicating well with that other part of our brain, we're going to see people say and do things that are uninhibited because they don't have that part of the frontal lobe of their brain that can to sort of be a social filter anymore. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple characteristics of frontotemporal dementia. And then there's another one called Lewy body dementia, or dementia with Lewy bodies. That's what they, upon autopsy, found that Robin Williams, about 7 or 8 years ago, passed away from.
Didn't he kill himself?
No, he had a form of dementia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he had, and it moved fairly quickly with him. But Lewy body dementia is a type of dementia that causes trouble with movement, similar but not the same as, say, a Parkinsonian condition. So there's trouble with movement, and folks can have hallucinations, and they're very, very sensitive to medication changes. So sometimes if someone is having a hallucination, their doctor will prescribe a certain medication for them. Well, for someone with Lewy body dementia, that medication that might be prescribed may actually do more harm than good. So the doctor may prescribe it to get rid of those hallucinations. And for someone with Lewy body dementia, they're just so sensitive to the medication that it actually really throws their whole condition out of whack and makes the situation harder than it was before.
Wow, I didn't know there was all these different types of dementia.
Yeah, and there's even more than that. But normally during our education programs, we focus on just a handful because we could really spend quite a lot of time going over even more types of dementia. So those are the ones that I think the audience would probably have heard a little bit about, maybe in passing even.
I have not. I've not heard of frontal temporal or Lewy body. If somebody that's watching the show has a loved one that they suspect has an issue, what do they do? Who can they call? Where can they go?
So I think when it comes to obtaining a diagnosis, most people first go to their primary care physician, which is fine. You know, that's again, probably 98% of the time, that's where folks are going to intersect first with the medical community. That's who knows them the best, has probably been monitoring them for a while. And a primary care physician is going to rule out what could be causing some cognitive issues, but that has nothing to do with dementia. So I'll give you a few examples of that. So if someone has an infection, they may not be thinking or thinking as normally as they normally would, right? They're not feeling well. I mean, I don't know if you've had COVID. You know, I know a lot of people. Yeah, I have
a couple
too.
Weeks ago,
right?
Actually.
So you know, so if we're thinking of we're in the COVID era. So if we're thinking of someone who has COVID, you know, they're not feeling like themselves, and that includes right, like can't concentrate. You know, it's harder to remember things, and it just feels foggy, right? So if someone has an infection, they may experience some changes in their memory or their thinking, but it's related to the infection. If someone has a vitamin or a nutrient deficiency, they could not be feeling like themselves. If someone has been overusing alcohol for a long time,
does it kill the brain cells?
It can damage.
I've always heard that.
Yeah,
I had a relative that said he only had 3 brain cells left.
Well, he probably had more than that if he was able to tell you he only had 3. But yeah, there's an alcohol-related dementia, and I definitely have seen that. And the other thing that I want to mention too is that there is such a thing as mixed dementia. Mixed dementia is when someone has more than one type of dementia at the same time.
Oh.
Which really does happen. I've seen it many, many times. So for instance, if someone has Alzheimer's disease and then they have a stroke, you know, they could be left with, you know, they already had the Alzheimer's disease developing and then they had a stroke, which sort of exacerbated the cognitive issue.
Oh, I know somebody that had a stroke and then he never got his memory recovered.
He never recovered.
No, he didn't.
So, you know, having one dementia doesn't guarantee you're not going to have another, which is kind of, you know, I'm sad to say, but anyway, going back to, you know, what a person would do, what a family member would do. So I think there's a couple of different, you know, there's what you would do with the healthcare profession, and then there's what someone would do for kind of support and to be prepared. So again, I'm sure most people, again, go to see their primary care physician, and the primary care physician wants to rule out some of the things I just mentioned.
Right.
Let's go
back to cognitive, because, you know, some people might not know what that word means.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. So what cognitive decline means? So cognitive decline has to do with changes in a person's memory and thinking and behavior that starts to
like asking them what their address is and they don't know it.
Right. So people can mess up a whole manner of things, but their memory might not be as good as it once was. They may forget the words that they want to use, or their recall might not be as good as it once was. They may have trouble with their judgment. So maybe they used to be really great with their money, and now all of a sudden they're giving away financial information to strangers, and they're, you know, and that happens.
Oh, and I know, when older people are preyed upon by, you know, those
right,
callers.
Absolutely. So our cognition really helps us, process all the information and all the things that we're doing. So when we see issues with cognition, we're thinking about, again, a person's thinking, a person's memory, their reasoning, their judgment, their insight, their awareness. So those types of functioning, I guess, or functions.
Well, I know they used to call it old timers disease.
Old timers.
Yeah, because
Some people still call it that.
I know.
as a to be sarcastic, or and people have called it lots of things. I mean, more people. Many years ago, people would just chop it up to senility, and
people are
being
senile. So can somebody be senile without having dementia?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure how to answer that because I grew up sort of after the age of people being called senile, and so I think a lot of people referred to senile as either the normal age-related changes that we see in thinking and memory, or they were referring to dementia. It's hard to know. But there are age-related changes in a person's memory, but they're very mild, and they do not interfere with a person's functioning. What we get concerned about and what rises to the level of dementia is when a person's cognitive abilities decline to the point where they interfere with independence and day-to-day functioning. So without that second part, without the symptoms impacting day-to-day functioning, it may be a problem or a concern, but it might not qualify as like actually being diagnosed as a type of dementia.
The old soldiers' home, they don't call it that anymore. In Boscawen, is it in Boscawen?
Or Tilton?
Tilton, yes. What do they call it? Veterans. Okay,
The Veterans Home.
There's a lot of people there that probably have trouble with their memory, but they remember who they were when they were younger.
Yeah.
So, because I used to be on the Veterans Committee, and we did a tour, and they have pictures of themselves as a young person on the right outside their door, so they know where their room is.
Yeah.
And isn't that funny? Like I'm middle-aged, and we'll just say it. And I have such a good memory that I actually frighten my childhood friends because I will tell them things about themselves. My oldest friend, we've been friends since we were 9 years old. I tell her children their family history because she doesn't remember it.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, and it frightens them. But then if I can't remember like what I did that morning, I get scared.
Well, I think that's probably for you, knowing that you're super busy. I think that's probably more related to you just having to be so many places in a given day and you have so much on your plate. So I think that, our brain can only sort of process and hold a certain amount of information.
I've heard that.
Yeah. So I think, that happens to me all the time. I'll be rushing around and then I'll go into a room and I'll forget why I went there.
Oh, yeah. You have to go back to where you started. It's like, why did I go in the office again? And then I go back to the kitchen. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we talked about COVID. So I noticed that during COVID, it was like certain words. I would remember the old word because you know how language has changed. Like senile. A lot of young people today don't know what that word is. They've never heard it. I couldn't think of the word, so I used an older word, and my kids got all mad at me, like, Mom, you can't use that word, Papa. I'm like, sorry, I
couldn't remember the current word for it.
Head fog, brain fog, sorry. And now when we were talking about the frontal temporal, what came to mind was Phineas Gage.
Yeah.
You've heard of Phineas Gage? Now, I believe his skull is still at Harvard University.
I believe
it's a very interesting New Hampshire story. He lived in like the 1800s, and he worked with explosives. They would dig a hole and they'd put the TNT, I guess, or some blasting powder with sand on top, and then they'd take this tamping iron, which was just an iron, and that they would tamp down the sand and then blow it and whatever they needed to blow up. But there was one day he forgot to put the sand down, so as soon as he hit that hole, it hit the blasting powder, and that tamping iron went up through his skull. It gave him a lobotomy. Everyone thought he was dead, and he got up, started walking around, but he was missing part of his brain. So he went on to become a Concord coach driver.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Famous Concord coach drivers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, and there was a TV series about the railroad Hell on Wheels, I believe it was called. And in the background, you can hear someone talking about Phineas Gage. I'm like, oh, did you hear that? They were talking about that. His skull is at Harvard University. So,
Yeah, it's fascinating how the brain works.
but he didn't have dementia, but he was missing part of his brain. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Well, I mean, what very possibly could have happened with him is that whatever part of the brain was damaged, I would consider that more of a traumatic brain injury versus a dementia, right? So whatever part of the brain was damaged from his traumatic brain injury may not have affected his ability to be for his job or what have you, but who knows what his functioning was like in terms of him being able to make a meal for himself.
Right. The other thing about Phineas Gage was his personality was never the same. He had a very different personality.
Yeah, I believe that.
So I wanted to get back to what people could do, because you said the primary care physician could diagnose.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then what's the next step? Because we have 5 minutes.
Well, another step could be from there would be that the primary care physician could refer to a specialist like a neurologist or a geriatrician or a neuropsychologist for some additional testing to try to hone in on what type of dementia it is. But while a person is going through the diagnostic process, the Alzheimer's Association and other social service agencies can be supporting the family and the person living with the disease to provide them with education about the condition that they've been diagnosed with or that might be in consideration for as a diagnosis. So we have a lot of people that contact the Alzheimer's Association and say, this is what my husband has been experiencing. We're in the process of getting him tested to see if he has Alzheimer's or another type of dementia. So in the meantime, I can help them understand what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and other types of dementia? What are the warning signs? What are the symptoms they're experiencing? Get a little history about what their circumstances look like.
Could you name some warning signs? I mean, besides the obvious ones.
Yeah, short-term memory loss is typically what people think of when they think of Alzheimer's disease.
Well, that's all of us.
So, and a short-term memory would be, for instance, what we had for breakfast versus a long-term memory, which could be what street you lived on as growing up as a child.
16142 Cypress Street.
Right, exactly.
Covina,
exactly.
California.
So another warning sign has to do with changes in communication, whether it's reading, writing, verbalizing, what you want or need, and also sort of understanding what other people are communicating to you as well. That can change. Changes in vision are also common with Alzheimer's disease specifically. A person's vision and spatial awareness can change as the disease progresses. There are some physical changes that accompany Alzheimer's disease. It's not just memory and thinking.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of scary because everyone who knows me knows that I'm easy to sneak up on, because when I'm working on something, whether it's yard work or whatever, I'm usually just focused on what I'm doing, and I don't notice people come up and they call my name like,
I get startled very easily too. My 10-year-old likes to she thinks that's hysterical and likes to actually play pranks on me, which I don't appreciate.
I did a show on Alzheimer's once before with the woman who works at the care facility in Bedford, and she gave me a book too. And one of the things I remember from that book was it talked about, how there's always an alert, like somebody's missing, an elderly person is missing from their home. Well, to combat that, you put a different doorknob up, higher up. And that's the doorknob that works because they don't know to look up. They know where the doorknob is. It got, muscle memory.
Muscle memory.
They'll go and try the door. The doorknob doesn't work, but the working doorknob's high up. But that will keep your loved one from escaping the house.
Yeah, that's one strategy to help them not elope, which would lead to maybe them getting lost or wandering.
And the other thing, because I want to mention this on every show because there's so many people with Alzheimer's now, that the woman from the care facility told me that people with dementia can still read. They can read. So when my mom was dying, I must have heard this from somebody else actually, because I talked about it on the show and I showed her the notebook from when my mom was dying, and I wrote things down, and she read the things I wrote. It's like some time went by, a few moments went by, and she started singing a little song that she used to sing to my daughter when she was a baby. And I'm like, I have it on my phone too. I got her to say it again, but she said, I did a selfie with the phone and the video, and she says, oh, is that me? That's kind of scary. I don't want to see that. Oh no. Oh no.
But different strategies. I think what's important is that that's a strategy that worked for you, for your mom. Writing things down, that might not work for everybody, and it also, so person to person, it's different, and then it also probably depends on where the person is in the disease process. So, different strategies work for different people. So I think that's one great strategy, like, putting the doorknob or the lock in a place that's not obvious, for the person with memory loss. Some other people might put a chime on the door or have other ways to help that person avoid, getting out of the house and wandering and so forth. So yeah, it varies a lot from person to person based on symptoms that someone is experiencing.
So Melissa, this has been a very interesting show. I learned a lot from you today, and I hope the viewers appreciated it as well. We have just a minute left, so I want to give that last minute to you to talk to the viewers, to give them your information.
Sure.
So they can contact you for more information.
So we just want to thank you for joining us today, and I just wanted to say that the Alzheimer's Association has an office in Bedford, New Hampshire, where we serve the entire state of New Hampshire. You can reach us at 1-800-272-3900. Again, we're in Bedford, New Hampshire. You can reach that number. It is completely free, and it's available 24 hours a day. So nights, weekends, and holidays, you'll be able to reach somebody to talk about whatever you need.
So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jean.
And shout out to Bob Bergen, because you got me into this, and I'm glad that you did.
Yes.
And thank you to everybody who went to Hot Dog Day and helped raise
$13,000.
And I should be there next year. I'm not going anywhere, so I will see you before that. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.